नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. So welcome you all for this session, which is a continuation of what we did yesterday. But today's title was Principles from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, or Wisdom from Bhagavad Gita, something like that. So we will touch upon that, and then we will see the time that we spent yesterday. What is that one significant theme or principle which is so glaringly and vividly present in that chapter that we read? So this is dedicated to His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Recall what we were discussing yesterday. I had this brief outline yesterday, and as I was mentioning this yesterday, that this is given in one of the room conversations that Srila Prabhupada had, and it's a very important thing to know or to understand in life. And the reason being, yesterday I was telling how Radhashtami is a sweet festival, and important thing about Radharani is how she does the devotional service. Doing devotional service is not so great, because we can hear, we can learn, we can do, we can find out something, and we can do. We can know what to do. But it is important how we do it. So as I was sharing yesterday, Prabhupada says, unless we follow principles, we cannot develop character. And unless we have character, we cannot respect ourselves. Forget about others respecting us, even we ourselves cannot respect ourselves. So it is very important to follow the principles in life, and these principles develop the character, and by the character people respect us. So to become respectable, even in our own eyes, we need to have principles. Now principles are something which is how I'm going to lead my life, which is inalienable. It cannot be separated. I have decided, I have kept some boundaries. This is how I'm going to lead my life. And as I was mentioning yesterday, Bhagavad Gita, there are many such wonderful principles which are given, which are there throughout in the pages of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Very, very important, these principles to know. Because our thought, our action, our whole existence in this world is governed by the principles that we define for ourselves. So, what are some of the principles which Bhagavad Gita talks about? So, there are many such principles. Let me share a few from Bhagavad Gita, which is prevalent in all the pages of Bhagavad Gita. You can see this. Here I put some 6 Principles of Bhagavad Gita. There is ahimsa, non-violence. There is samadarshinaha. There is dharma, which we know it or we think we know it. There is amanitvam or humility. There is priti or love and affection. And there is ichha. Now, these principles are very fundamental, are very core. And some of the words that we see, we think we know the meaning. For example, ahimsa. We think what ahimsa is. We in our culture, when we know that Gandhiji fought for this, and we know that what non-violence means, not being cruel to others or something like that. Kind of a vague definition we have. Very important to know what is the definition of ahimsa given in Bhagavad Gita. Just to give you one example of these principles, how they are so important and how they sort of decide our whole life. When I abide that I am going to follow these principles, automatically I'm saying no to so many things. Automatically I'm choosing something to do in my life. And those principles, when time and again we do it, when we follow it, they become our character. So as I was telling yesterday, it's not about doing it on Thursdays. It's not about weekly once I'm attending Bhagavatam class. It's not about journey to Janmashtami, which ended in Janmashtami. My, all these activities that I was doing, it takes a full stop. Now I'll go back to my normal life. Or somebody, on a Friday or a Saturday goes to a party, and Monday shows up for a meeting. These are all not, the right way of living life. These are like, some split personality or schizophrenia or something like that. It's not like that, because we have not understood why this is necessary or what is it that we should follow. I'll share a definition. I'll share the definition of ahimsa from 2 pages in Bhagavad Gita. But before I do that, there is another place where Prabhupada is also talking about ahimsa, and just very 2-3 lines. What Prabhupada is saying is that I'm not going to harm people or live a life that causes least harm. So that's a principle. I'm not going to harm people or live a life that causes least harm. Gita says a truly thoughtful person will lead a life of non-cruelty and non-violence. Such a dedicated person develops the virtue of compassion and tolerance. So Gita says a truly thoughtful person. If a person is not thoughtful, it's a different thing. But if a person is thoughtful, he lead a life of non-cruelty and non-violence. And such dedicated person develops the virtue of compassion and tolerance. Important thing to remember is principles lead to virtues. Sometimes when we see that somebody is showing some virtues like compassion and tolerance, we wish how I can develop that. So Prabhupada says it's the principles which lead to virtues. If you follow a principle, that means you have to change your lifestyle. You have to restrict your lifestyle. You have to cut out things that other people accept as normal. And yesterday I was giving the example of Jesus Christ. Right? And every spiritual person in religious tradition has done this. When people act spiritually, materially, people cannot understand this, what is going on. So following ahimsa also means, following, or, it's like flowing or going against the stream. Where some people are coming and they are doing some things and they are, they are coming along with the flow. So it's very relatively easy. And they're asking what's going on. So it is going against the norm. Now, there is one more thing which Prabhupada says very interestingly, very, very striking. In our lives, we need to make decisions every day that affect not just us, but those around us. So decisions not just affect us, but those around us. A life minimizing our negative influence on the world helps us make decisions that are respectful and balanced. A life of ahimsa includes the avoiding the harm of offending with cruel words, or withholding goodness and knowledge, and being neglectful of ourselves. There are four things which Prabhupada says. Avoiding harm of offending with cruel words. Use of cruel words, actually in 16th chapter, harshness of speech is considered by Krishna as a demoniac nature. So avoiding the harm of offending with cruel words, first one. Withholding goodness and knowledge. We see somewhere a person is suffering, is in need, and we can be of help by sharing this knowledge and goodness. But if we withhold that, then that is also himsa. Being neglectful of ourselves. Now imagine, we have heard so much about the value of human life and what we can achieve and the power of the spiritual knowledge, the rarity of having a pure devotee spiritual master in life. And after all these things, if still one neglects oneself, neglecting ourselves is called himsa. So ahimsa is a principle that involves all our behavior and all our relationships, which defines our character and integrity. So once one chooses ahimsa, as I said, it's very broad. Ahimsa is not just thinking that I'm not going to harm people. In that definition also, who are people? What is the definition of harm? Is something one should ask. And very interestingly, in Bhagavad Gita also, there is a definition of ahimsa which is given. This is from 10th chapter, 4th verse, where Krishna lists something called items of knowledge. So here he's saying ahimsa, non-violence, means that one should not do anything which will put others into misery or confusion. Material activities that are promised by so many politicians, sociologists, philanthropists, etc., do not produce very good results because the politicians, philanthropists have no transcendental vision. They do not know what is actually beneficial for human society. So again, Prabhupada is giving a definition. Ahimsa means that people should be trained in such a way that the full utilization of the human body can be achieved. If somebody is not doing that, if somebody is not getting trained up, then he is not following the principle of ahimsa. The human body is meant for spiritual realization. So any movement or any commissions which do not further that end commit violence on the human body. You see the definition of ahimsa which is given in Bhagavad Gita? That which furthers the future spiritual happiness of the people in general is called non-violence. So that which furthers the future spiritual happiness of the people in general is called non-violence. In another chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. So progressive life of any living entity, not arresting. Somebody is suffering, somebody is going through some miseries, we don't help, is actually an act of violence, is himsa. If somehow or other one can inspire him to take to the path of spirituality, that is ahimsa. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits, and milk. There is no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. So ahimsa is not just the cruelty of killing an animal, it is also means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in the form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. You see, these are all very subtle, powerful laws of nature. Nobody can change them. Now, when we are acting against them, just to satisfy the palate or the tongue, we are checking the progressive journey of that animal, of that soul in that particular body. Because it is destined to live for a particular number of days, for a certain number of days. And if a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. And if an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. This is called ahimsa. You see, the definition of ahimsa, which is given in Bhagavad Gita, is quite different, quite contradictory or quite radical, I would say, to what our common understanding and perception is. So that is why it is very important to understand the principles. What are the principles I have set aside for myself? Because once I have identified those principles for myself, then automatically the life, it follows. Now, and that principle has to be, that's why Prabhupada uses the word thoughtful men. A person has to be thoughtful. These are not some blind principles, which actually outside people do not have any principles in life. It's just simply some blind life. Oh, okay, we'll go and do something. So having the right principles is very important because that defines our character. There are so many other principles which I was sharing there. Samadarshina, Amanitvam, Preeti, Krishna says about that in 12th chapter. Or Ichha. Ichha is translated as it means desire, but more precisely in Bhagavad Gita, this is called the free will. So very interestingly, and one of the uniqueness of Bhagavad Gita, which keeps it, which makes it very different from any other religious scriptures, is the expression of respect of free will by the Lord Himself. So Krishna speaks to Arjuna very openly, truthfully, and with great affection because he's his intimate devotee, his friend. So he has shared all the informations about yoga, about karma, about dhyana, about all these principles. But he's also saying what is to be done. Like for example, in yoga, he says, go to a place which is secluded, sit in a place which is not too high, not too low, meditate on the tip of nose, and the eyes should be half open, half closed. Otherwise, you'll fall asleep. And all those things he says, and then the point is, you should meditate or focus on the Paramatma in the heart. Then Arjuna says, is it practical really? I mean, how will I be able to do this? It is as difficult as controlling the wind. How will I control my mind? So like that, Krishna is telling different things to tell, but ultimately, one thing where he is drawing him, and that is very clearly brought out by Prabhupada in any chapter that you read, in any pages of Bhagavad Gita. You can't miss this. What is that one thing which Krishna tries to bring out in Bhagavad Gita? He's saying ultimately, Arjuna, that all these things that I am saying is finally aimed at building a relationship with me. It's all about that relationship. It's about you and me, which is based on love. So do you want a loving relationship with me? Because I love you. And that's a very big thing to say. He has got all the options, like, your karma, you do some jnana, you do all these things. But this one thing makes really sense, because we are eternally part and parcel of the Lord, and the Lord is always, in every circumstance, in every moment, is very love. He is affectionate. He is lovable. He is expressing his love towards us. We are not expressing our love. So this human form of life is a chance to develop that lost relationship with Krishna. But yet Krishna does not force. It is not a dogmatic um, preaching. Like some of the other scriptures, they say, you don't do this, then you go there. You'll rot, or you'll have something else. No, Krishna says you deliberate on this information that I'm given, and you choose. You choose what you want to do. And that choice is meant for thoughtful men. Nobody is forcing anyone here. Everybody is free to do what they want to do. But a person, when he is thoughtful, he makes the right choice. The beauty of Bhagavad Gita lies, intellectually it makes sense, because it is not like, you are telling you come and this way and finally this is what you have to do. Not like that. Krishna has left him in the 18th chapter. Yathaichhasi tatha kuru. Deliberate on all the information, all the instructions that I have given. If you think this makes sense, do it. And intellectually it makes sense, and spiritually also it makes sense, because if somebody has to develop a love for someone, it has to be voluntary. You can't force it on someone. And the reason why we are suffering lifetime after lifetime is because we are making this strong choice every single day, every single moment, not just in the lifetime, every single day. Even though we are devotees, we still are envious of Krishna. There is a subtle feeling of envy which is there, which is impeding our growth in spiritual life, which is not allowing us to progress in spiritual life. Spiritual life, we will see what we discussed yesterday, what we read. One slice of life of Krishna from the pastimes that we read yesterday. It's so wonderful. One common theme, I'll just show you right now how wonderfully it is depicted, not just in this one particular incident, in the whole entire Krishna book. This is there. And what is that one thing that we will see? But that one thing is missing in our life. Of course, I don't want to keep so much of suspense. It is actually the loving relationship with Krishna. The love for Krishna in our life is not present. Every day, every moment is a chance to develop. And this has to be done voluntarily. This is the real success of life. This is the success of life when we can develop our relationship, eternal relationship with that Supreme Lord who is constant companion to us in lifetime after lifetime. That is the beauty of Bhagavad Gita actually. So that is why, all this, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing some jnana yoga. Oh, what are you doing? I'm going and learning some of these things. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't really make sense. Today in the morning, we were hearing one class where Stoka Maharaj was mentioning that the realization comes from the heart. You have realized these are real things. Krishna is actually present in our heart, witnessing all our activities in all forms of life, not just human form of life. But the human form of life is developed to understand this, to become cognizant of the presence of the Lord inside us, and to develop that lost relationship. And every single day, every single moment is a new chance, is a new opportunity to develop that. So that is why when one makes a choice which is informed, where he knows the consequences, the repercussions of making that choice, he makes a wise decision. And this is voluntary. This is not like, you come, not like that. Because that is the real perfection of human life. I can go on talking about the other principles, but we will go and see something that we read from yesterday's wonderful Krsna book. So if you remember, we had the 6 pictures, which sums up the the chapter 11 of Krsna Book, I just want to take maybe 2 or 3 examples out of the 6. The remaining 2 or 3, you can do it yourself at home. Please do it and see this unique theme or the uniqueness which is present all throughout the entire pages of Bhagavad Gita. Sorry, entire pages of Bhagavatam and Krishna book, especially. In the devotees who were present around Krishna. How one can, you just can't afford to miss this. Let's see what is that common thing which I'm talking about. So this chapter, instead of going through the Krishna book that we read yesterday, I just want to do it a little differently. This is from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The translation is by Srila Prabhupada. It begins with Sukadev Goswami's continuation. Sukadev Goswami continued, O Maharaj Parikshit, when the Yamala Arjuna trees fell, all the cowherd men in the neighborhood, hearing the fierce sound and fearing thunderbolts, went to the spot. So there are 2 trees which have fallen, and actually the wonderful aspect of Bhagavatam is in the details. So many details are there. So many wonderful nuances of Krishna's pastimes are described by these acharyas. So imagine, all these cowherd boys and the gopas, they are busy working somewhere and they heard some fierce sound and fearing thunderbolts. They just rushed. What happened? And when they reached there they saw the fallen Yamala Arjuna trees on the ground, but they were bewildered because even though they could directly perceive that the trees had fallen, they could not trace out the cause for their having done so. They found that there were 2 gigantic trees which have been uprooted. But they were just shocked. There is nothing else which has happened. Everything is fine. There is no storm. There is nothing, no cyclone. But just 2 trees have been uprooted. And they just couldn't fathom. They could not perceive how this could have happened. Krishna was bound by the rope to the ulukhala, the mortar, which he was dragging. But how could he have pulled down the trees? Who had actually done it? Where was the source for this incident? Considering all these astounding things, the cowherd men were doubtful and bewildered. They are seeing Krishna, baby Krishna, who was tied to that mortar by Mother Yashoda. He's there on the scene, but they're wondering how could he have pulled down these trees? It's a small baby with a tied to a mortar, and there are 2 gigantic trees. There's no match. So they are wondering, they're bewildered, and they're thinking, what has happened? Who could have done this? Where was the source for this incident? And considering this, the cowherd men were doubtful and bewildered. Then all the cowherd boys said, these are all Krishna's friends, it is Krishna who has done this. When he was in between the 2 trees, the mortar fell crosswise. Krishna dragged the mortar and the 2 trees fell down. After that, 2 beautiful men came out of the trees. We have seen this with our own eyes. They actually saw that. And they are narrating, we have seen. Have faith in our words. If you're not, having faith on, what has happened, you're bewildered and doubtful. We were present. So, Krishna, he dragged the mortar and the 2 trees fell down. But very interestingly, what this Gopas react. Because of intense paternal affection, cowherd men headed by Nanda could not believe that Krishna could have uprooted the trees in such a wonderful way. Therefore, they could not put their faith in the words of the boys. Some of the men, however, were in doubt. Since Krishna was predicted to equal Narayana, they thought it might be that he could have done it. Still there is disbelief, but just because they heard the words of Krishna's friends, they are trying to correlate. But because of their intense love for Krishna, you see the underlying theme in all these pages of in all these pages of Krishna book, in all these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam where Krishna is present, everyone surrounding Krishna, their life is filled with love for Krishna. They are so concerned, so absorbed. Oh my God, Krishna, what has happened to you? They, that is the biggest difference. That is the difference between an inhabitant of a spiritual world or a Vrindavan planet, Vrindavan Loka, and people like us. We don't have, we have no love for Krishna. Unfortunately, that love for Krishna, which is our natural thing, gets perverted in this material world and it develops in all other forms. I have love for my wife, I have love for my husband, for my children, for my all my near and dear ones, relatives. These are all temporary, and these are all not the pure transcendental love which Krishna experiences with all his devotees. Because of lack of understanding, because of ignorance, because of not having the proper knowledge and awareness, we search for that eternal blissful love in our material relationships, without knowing that each one of us have a unique relationship with the Lord, and we can develop that loving relationship in this human form of life. Whereas this inhabitants of Braja, they're naturally, there is overflowing of love and emotions in whichever manner it is, be it Nanda Baba, be it Yashoda, be it all even Chota Mota, cows, calves, all are in having loving relationship with the Lord. That is how they are there in spiritual world. That is how they are there in Vrindavan. That is why the important verse in Bhagavad Gita is Ichha Dvesha Samuthena Dvanda Mohena Bharata. Sammoham Sarva Bhutani Sarge Yanti Parantapa. Ichha and Dvesha. There is enviousness. You see, it manifests very subtly, which we don't realize. And the Prabhupada says that the origin of this kind of envy in this material world is because we are envious of Krishna. In this country, especially when we are traveling, when we are going on some highways and there are some signals and you stop there and you see that next to you there is another person who's coming and is stopping next to you, and they exchange smiles. They look at you and they smile. So you also look at him, and you're probably traveling in a scratched old Honda Odyssey, and somebody else is traveling in a nice Rolls Royce, or no, Rolls Royce is not so common, maybe a nice Mercedes or something, a very fancy car. Even though he says hi or something, he waves at you. The feeling is, yeah, it's okay. I see that you are traveling in that car, and that's why you are showing this. That there is a natural this thing. It's an automatic feeling. I know there are some people who there are devotees who share. When somebody comes to our temple or something, he came in this car, Tesla. Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means I don't have it. Okay, that person is enjoying in that car. So there is an envy, which is a natural this thing when we see somebody is in a little in advantageous position, or when somebody has got some little more prosperity. This is because we are envious towards Krishna. Krishna is not present in our heart. We don't have a loving relationship with Krishna. So Ichha and Dvesha. And the idea is to enjoy here. Let me enjoy and let me control as much material nature, as much material things I can let me enjoy and dabble in that. And that's how I'm coming here in this material world, and I'm continuing to accept different bodies, one body after another, one body after another. It is going on. We can give a full stop to this just by understanding that this is the central theme of Vedic scripture. How do I develop my loving relationship? Once I'm clear about this, as I said, the principles are the most important thing. That sets aside the character. That naturally, when a person does that, there is no fear of what somebody is going to say if I put some tilak, what somebody is going to say if I'm putting some tilak, kantimala. Otherwise, it is like somebody has told me, now I have to do what to do. They are all doing. If I don't wear, then something will happen. They'll think something about me. Let me put. They're all not the right things. This will not last. When Nanda Maharaj saw his own son bound with ropes to the wooden mortar and dragging it, he smiled and released Krishna from his bonds. The gopis would say, "If you dance, my dear Krishna, then I shall give you half a sweetmeat." Half a sweetmeat. You see, they're not giving full. If you dance, my dear Krishna, then I shall give you half a sweetmeat. By saying these words or by clapping their hands, All the gopis encouraged Krishna in different ways. At such times, although he was the supremely powerful personality of Godhead, he would smile and dance according to their desire, as if he were a wooden doll in their hands. Sometimes he would sing very loudly at their bidding. In this way, Krishna came completely under the control of the gopis. The last line is a very important thing. Krishna came completely under the control of the gopis. Actually, Krishna gets purchased by our devotion. Came completely under the control of the gopis. That is what exactly I was telling yesterday. Rupa Goswami says, Anyabhilasita sunyam, jnana karmadi anamritam, anukullina krishnanu silanam bhakti ruttama. This bhakti, this process of devotion is so powerful, so blissful, that Krishna gets purchased. He becomes controlled by this. But it has to be no other desire. Anyabhilasita sunyam, jnana karmadi anamritam. Free from all this jnana, karma, why to do this, all this kind of studies and doing some kind of ritualistic things. No. I have to develop a loving relationship with my Lord. And Lord is there with us to help. The journey has to be traversed by both together, not alone. But I have to begin the journey, and I have to keep making progress. There is a verse in Bhagavatam which says, Saveda dhatu padabim parasya duranta viryasya rathangapane yo mayaya santataya anubritya bhajeta tatpada sarojagandham. Very beautiful verse, very, very beautiful verse. Saveda dhatu padabim parasya. Veda means to know. Saveda dhatu padabim. So there is a word called padabim parasya. So if we want to know Krishna, not just Krishna, Krishna in his full glories, in his full opulences. Saveda dhatu padabim parasya duranta viryasya rathangapane. Rathangapane, ratha anga pane. Pane is hand. Ratha anga, the wheel of that chariot which was carried by Krishna. That's why his name is Rathangapane. Saveda dhatu, it's a beautiful verse and you can sing it. Saveda dhatu padavim parasya duranta viryasya rathangapane yo mayaya santataya nubritya bhaje tatatpada saroja gandham. So that Lord who's carrying that wheel in his hand, if you want to know him in his full glories, in his full potencies, in his original completeness, who Krishna is, not something like we hear here and there, watch some TVs, read some Amar Chitragatha, not like that. If you want to really know, realize, then there is something which is mentioned there. Yo mayaya santataya anuvritya bhajeta tatpada sarojagandham. Bhajeta means to engage in devotional service. One has to engage in devotional service, but what kind of devotional service? Yo mayaya. Amayaya means without any cessation. Not like today, then 20 days gap. Then I'll show up again. I'm regular, Prabhu. The person feels he's regular, he's coming. But not like that. Yo mayaya, amayaya, without any gap. Santataya, continuously. Yo mayaya, santataya, anubritya, and favorably. So one has to engage in devotional service continuously, without gap, without reservation, and continuously. Then one can know Krishna. This is a very interesting verse. Sometimes Mother Yashoda and her Gopi friends would tell Krishna, bring this article, bring that article. Sometimes they would order him to bring a wooden plank, wooden shoes, or wooden measuring pot. And Krishna, when thus ordered by the mothers, would try to bring them. Sometimes, however, as if unable to raise these things, he would touch them and stand there. Just to invite the pleasure of his relatives, he would strike his body with his arms to show that he had sufficient strength. You see, now this is a pastime which yesterday we saw the wonderful this thing where people are asking him to bring some article, and how baby Krishna is struggling. Even if it is heavier, even if he's not able to lift it, balance it, he still does that. But very interestingly, the details, if you see, there are two things which is mentioned here. They are asking that, bring this article and bring that article. So Krishna would try to get that. But there are two things which are mentioned here. Sometimes, however, as if unable to raise things, you just touch them. Something which is very heavy, like let's say this is a very heavy thing, he'll just touch. He's not able to lift them. So you see, just imagine how Krishna is playing the prank. He's the supreme Lord, the most powerful, yet he's acting like a perfect baby. He's touching them. And sometimes what is he doing? Just to invite the pleasure of his relatives, he would strike his body with his arms so that he had sufficient strength. See, these are so many fine details about Krishna which is mentioned in this. And who's mentioning this? Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit, who's about to die, that the time is running out. Yet he is giving this just to show how such an important thing, this which is given in the next verse, to pure devotees throughout the world who could understand his activities, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna exhibited how much he can be subdued by his devotees, his servants. In this way, he increased the pleasure of the Brajavasis by his childhood activities. Very important thing, this concept is how Krishna gets purchased by your devotion, becomes ours. The devotion has to be done in the right mood. How is a very important thing, not mechanically. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Ram, Ram. Somehow we just finish. Not like that. Yo Mayaya Santataya Anubhritya Bhajeta Tatpada Sarojagandham. So this is about the pastime of Krishna lifting this. I'll quickly go to the next one because we know I have limited time. This is the next one. Just see this wonderful, how beautifully this is given in Bhagavatam. Once a woman selling fruit was calling, "Oh, inhabitants of Brajabhumi, if you want to purchase some fruits, come here." Upon hearing this, Krishna immediately took some grains and went to barter as if he needed some fruits. While Krishna was going to the fruit vendor very hastily, most of the grains he was holding fell. Nonetheless, the fruit vendor filled Krishna's hands with fruits, and her fruit basket was immediately filled with jewels and gold. Now, this verse will see the purport and understand what is the beauty of this. You see, one thing which is mentioned here: while Krishna was going to the fruit vendor very hastily, most of the grains he was holding fell. There was nothing actually in his hand by the time he reached there. Still, nonetheless, the fruit vendor filled Krishna's hands with fruits. She just felt so moved. There was so much of affection. This baby Krishna has brought something. Nothing is there in her hand, but she has come. For some reason, she has come. He wants to take this fruits. Let me give. Just that one feeling. And what an effect, what an impact of that, and how beautifully Prabhupada explains this in his purport. In Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada quotes two verses from 9th chapter, 9.26 and 9.27, but very, 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 very powerful, very instructive for all of us. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti upahritam ashnami prayatatmana. Krishna is so kind that if anyone offers him a leaf, a fruit, a flower, or some water, he will immediately accept it. The only condition is that this thing should be offered with bhakti. Yome bhaktya prayachati. See, an acharya is telling how is a very important thing. How it has to be offered with bhakti. Yome bhaktya prayachati. Otherwise, if one is puffed up with false prestige, thinking, I have so much of opulence and I am giving something to Krishna, one's offering will not be accepted by Krishna. The fruit vendor, although a woman belonging to a poor aborigine class, dealt with Krishna with great affection, saying, Krishna, you have come to me to take some fruit in exchange for grains. All the grains have fallen, but still you may take whatever you like. Thus he filled Krishna's palms with whatever fruits he could carry. In exchange, Krishna filled her whole basket with jewels and gold. From this incident, one should learn that for anything offered to Krishna with love and affection, Krishna can reciprocate many millions of times over, both materially and spiritually. The basic principle involved is an exchange of love. Therefore, Krishna teaches in Bhagavad Gita, Yat karoshi yad asnasi, yad juhoshi dadasi yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. With love and affection, one should try to give something to Krishna from one's source of income. Then one's life will be successful. Krishna is full in all opulences. He does not need anything from anyone. But if one is prepared to give something to Krishna, that is for one's own benefit. The example given in this connection is that when one's real face is decorated, the reflection of one's face is automatically decorated. Similarly, if we try to serve Krishna with all our opulences, we as parts and parcels or reflections of Krishna will become happy in exchange. Krishna is always happy for his Atma Ram, fully satisfied with his own opulence. They're all wonderful nectarian things which we need to understand, and how that same thing, that love that that person had, the lady vendor had, made so much of difference. If you want to take away some 5 things from this, the reciprocation of the Lord is unlimited times. The reflection decoration, when we give to Krishna, because we are giving and Krishna becomes pleased, we also become pleased, because we are actually his reflection. So Krishna is pleased, we are pleased. False prestige renunciation, expectation of giving and offering with devotion. So what does that mean? Prabhupada mentions, as we saw in the purport, patram pushpam phalam toyam, with devotion. You may bhaktya prayachati, Krishna accepts that. Krishna rejects offering if one is puffed up with false prestige. I have so much of opulence, I am giving so much to Krishna. That kind of a feeling, it is rejected by the Lord. All the grains have fallen. You may still take what you like. So filled Krishna's palms with fruits. No expectation. There was absolutely no expectation in that. See, seeing that everything in his hand has already fallen, yet she gave it. She filled Krishna's palms with fruits. What is the reciprocation? Millions of times, materially and spiritually. Basic principle is exchange of love. Yat karoshi, yad ashnasi. And the reflection part, face reflection. With love and affection, try to give something to Krishna from source of income. Life is successful. Krishna is Atmara. Like that, I think, what I'm trying to say in this whole discussion that we are having so far is how the underlying theme in these pages of Bhagavatam, in these pages of Krishna book, is the inhabitants of Braja, how much of love, how much of affection, how much of intense love they had for Krishna. In all their activities, everything that they were doing, it was revolving around Krishna. And that, as I said, is the most important aspect of Vedic scripture. How can I develop that relationship with Krishna? Presently, our hearts are void. It is not there. There is no love for Krishna. And that is the reason we are looking for love in this material world and are getting frustrated. Now, as I said, we can't complete the remaining 4 pictures, but I was aware that the time will fall short, but there is something very, very powerful which I want to leave with you before we come to a conclusion in this chapter itself. So this is a verse 10:11:54. See the wonderful thing which Sukadev Goswami has narrated and how beautifully Prabhupada has written. Shrutva tad bishmita gopa gopyaschati priyadrataha pretyagatam ibod sukhyat aikshanta trishite kshanaha. What is the translation? When the cowherd men and women heard about the killing of Bakasura in the forest, they were very much astonished. Upon seeing Krishna and hearing the story, they received Krishna very eagerly, thinking that Krishna and the other boys had returned from the mouth of death. Thus they looked upon Krishna and the boys with silent eyes, not wanting to turn their eyes aside now that the boys were safe. I'll read the purport and then we'll see some very interesting things in this. Because of intense love for Krishna, the cowherd men and women simply remained silent, thinking of how Krishna and the boys had been saved. The cowherd men and women looked upon Krishna and the boys and did not desire to turn their eyes aside. You see how, if someone really loves someone, then the activities performed by him will be of a different nature altogether. This is exactly the characteristics of pure devotees residing in Vraja. They became silent. They saw that Bakasura, the calf demon, has been killed, and they were astonished. And upon seeing Krishna and hearing the story, they received Krishna very eagerly, thinking that Krishna and the other boys had returned from the mouth of death. And they are just looking upon Krishna. And boys with silent eyes, not wondering to turn their eyes aside now that the boys were safe. This is the symptom of love. Not somehow we just ring some bell, offer something, do some puja, do something, read something, where whenever I feel like I'll come, something happens in my life, I get disturbed, then I'll not come. Not like that. The genuine feeling of love, intense love for Krishna. The cowherd men and women simply remained silent, thinking of how Krishna and the boys have been saved. Cowherd men and women looked upon Krishna and the boys and did not desire to turn their eyes aside. And there's a verse towards the end. This is the last but one verse where Sukadeva Goswami is saying, Iti nanda dayo gopaha Krishna Rama katham muda kurvanto ramamanascha navinandan bhava vedana. Very beautiful verse, very, very powerful verse. The translation is, in this way, all the cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, enjoyed topics about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great transcendental pleasure, ramamanas, and they could not even perceive material tribulations. This is the sum and substance of hearing and reading Krishna Book or Krishna Katha. All the cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, enjoyed topics about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great transcendental pleasure. Iti nandadayo gopaha Krishna Rama katham muda kurvanto ramamanascha. It gives tremendous, there is the unending, eternal source of pleasure in this katha, in this pastimes of the Lord. And when one hears that, even if there are material tribulations, even if one is going through some material difficulties, apparently, nobody can avoid this. Like the other day I was sharing one verse which is saying, in this path, there are ditches of happiness and distress. So sometimes one has to go through that, but he'll be unaffected by that. It will not affect him. Navinandan bhava vedana. Avinandan is to perceive. Bhava vedana, the tribulations of material existence will not touch. So it is, as I said, not what we are doing, it is how we are doing. Yes, we have to read Prabhupada's books. Yes, we have to spend time. But if it is a mechanical one, if it is just, it has to be done because I've been told, there is nothing in that. But understanding the nuances and understanding really, why, how, then life becomes really different. Then every day is a pleasure. Every day we are making advancement towards building our relationship with Krishna. So these are some of the important things that I wanted to share. Just to conclude, I want to again highlight about these things which I said at the beginning. Remember the principles in life. Principles are the roots of our existence. They define our life. Once we have the set principles aside for us and we follow those principles, then we develop character. And once one has character, then he'll develop respect. Respect in his own eyes, respect in the eyes of others. The person doesn't have character, talks big things, will not have any impact. There will not be any respect for his words. Yesterday I was telling about one professor, and even just before coming, I was trying to search his name. He's a German professor. His name is Professor Klostromor. He's the first director of Oxford University in the UK. So he had the rare opportunity of living in Vrindavan, before Prabhupada could even start his voice for the America, for the US. So he was there for 2 years in Vrindavan, and he had seen personally Srila Prabhupada. So much later, when he was asked, after Prabhupada has established ISKCON and there were a lot of followers, he was questioned, what do you think, why the Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhantas attract people? What is the best way of preaching? So his answer was, you don't need to do anything. It's just if you follow these principles of Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta, then automatically your behavior and character will change, and that itself is the best preaching. Prabhupada himself was a live example of that. And that is what we also should try to do. Not just because there is a session we should come. Not just because, nothing else to do, let's go. Let's have these principles clearly defined in our life. And then life will be different. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or any comments. Okay. Mention that if you are envious in this material world, it is because you are envious of Krishna. Can you please highlight more than on how is it related? Yeah, so you see, in this material world, whatever we are doing is a perverted reflection of spiritual world. There is actual love for Krishna in spiritual world, and in the material world there is a perverted reflection. So it is manifesting as lust or love in our material relationships, where we get frustrated because this love is not eternal, because the person himself is not eternal. How this love can be eternal? And that's how our attempts get thwarted, get disturbed. Similarly, the enviousness that we exhibit here in this material world towards others, the root of that is because we are envious of Krishna. When we hear some of the pastimes, like, for the first time, Krishna was enjoying with some gopis, or Krishna was stealing butter, one feeling somewhere in the subtle thing it comes, he gets away with all these things. He gets away with this, but I get caught if I want to do. There is a feeling, there is actually a feeling of enviousness towards him. He is able to get away with this, but when I do this, there is some problem. I can't do this. So that feeling, that original envy towards the Lord manifests in terms of envy towards other people. Somebody who is prospering in life, in material way, or even in spiritual way, we feel enviousness. And to deal with that, there is a beautiful verse actually, 4:8:32. 1 second. Just give me 1 minute. No, I don't have that right now. I'll share it tomorrow. But the fundamental thing about that verse is, if you just understand this one principle, that Krishna's mercy can fall upon anyone, anytime, and that is why this is causeless. Sometimes it falls. We don't know really. We sometimes judge someone. Oh, this person is like this. He cannot prosper. But somehow or other, if that person makes advancement, even in spiritual life, that is because of the mercy of Krishna. So if we just understand this one principle in life, even if he is advancing in spiritual life, even if he's making rapid progress, it is because of the mercy of Krishna. I've got nothing to fear from him. There is no threat for me from him. Let him advance. If I feel happy and satisfied about this, if I see somebody else getting some more responsibilities and some positions, and even if we were together at some point in time and he's making advancement, and I know that this is happening because of Krishna's mercy, and if he goes to Krishna Loka, at least when I go back, I know for sure there will be someone whom I knew. So that feeling that this is happening because of Krishna's mercy, And because Krishna's mercy is there, he's advancing. Instead of feeling envious about his progress, if I feel happy, let him serve more. Let him get more opportunity to serve, and let me be happy. This is the mentality of Radharani. This is the mentality of gopis, where there is no competition amongst themselves. They always, keep aside somebody else to come and take the lead. No, you do it, you follow it, no problem. That is where the difference between living in material world and spiritual world comes. Material world is characterized by enviousness towards each other, where we are not able to. Sometimes it is expressed grossly, sometimes it is very subtle. We sometimes grossly say some things, sometimes subtly we feel, and that manifests in our behavior and in our action, in our words. Why he is doing this, how he has got this, is after all, he is not some this thing, no. Why he is getting all this responsibilities or whatever, so those feelings we have to, that's actually the envy in this material world. I hope I answer your questions. What caused the process of bhakti becomes mechanical? Poor chanting, getting bored of the philosophy, gossip about Vaishnavas to become mechanical. Yeah, so it's a very important, it's a very nice question. As I said, the first thing for all of us is our sadhana, where one has to be first rigid about following this. Principles are important. You have to get up, dress up, and show up. You have to get up. You have to come for Mangalarati. You have to do practical devotional service. Now, unless one does practical devotional service, telling big things is yeah, I'll do, I'll see, I'll come, but nothing happens in a practical way. There's no practical devotional service. Where is the question of developing that real intense love which Radharani had? If we are not even engaging in devotional service properly, first thing for us is to overcome the pull of this material world and come out and do this devotional service. Get up in the morning and chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Get up in the morning and do Mangalarati. Get up and do your reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Engage in some practical devotional service for Krishna. Small, very, it is very little, but we have to do that. And once we do this regularly, continuously, without any gap, then there is a question of quality. Then there is a question of once the principle is set aside, once I'm doing it regularly, then I can know that this is becoming mechanical. Otherwise, I don't even realize. It's like driving car, where you are driving regularly from your house to office, office to house. You don't even you don't need to put it in your GPS, because you know it. It becomes mechanical. You're doing so many things. You're eating. You're doing this thing, but still, even unknowingly, you are taking the right turn where you have to take right or left, and you're reaching the office. It has become mechanical. So like that, our chanting or our this thing also becomes mechanical, because I'm not paying. There is no attention. There is no preeti. There is no love for Krishna. Somehow they have told me, now I have to just do this, because that principle in our life is missing. So the whole thing becomes mechanical. Did I answer? So as I said, I know some of those subtle principles which are given in Bhagavad Gita, which few things we were discussing, the Ichha, the free will, Ahimsa, the non-violence, then Preeti. Krishna says, actually, after having exhibited his Vishwarupa, the Virata Rupa, which was very scary, Arjuna immediately prayed him to come, show him his two-handed forms. After that, in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Priyo si me. I mean, if you do this, you become dear to me. You do this, he's sharing, he's revealing everything. And throughout the pages of Bhagavad Gita, he's telling, different paths, different things, and he's saying, this is my opinion, this is my opinion. But in 12th chapter, he's saying, if you do this, you become dear to me. And then after everything he has spoken, then he's telling Yathechasi Tatha Kuru. That is the biggest thing of Bhagavad Gita. He's giving that choice back to Arjuna to choose. Similarly, the choice is always given to us to choose what kind of a life I'm living. And that is exactly where I'm saying the principles define our character. If we have the right set of principles, that I have kept aside. I just can't be violent. I just can't be cruel to anybody else, including my own self. And that is what is ahimsa. So that takes care of so many things. So have the principles in life, then automatically these things will follow. Having the principles is the basic thing where we commit to ourselves that we will do this, because this is what I have kept aside for myself, and I'll follow this. Then the rest happens. So I just wanted to share one thing. Like tomorrow, we have a very special session at 11 o'clock EST, Eastern Time, that is going to be taken by His Grace Chanchalpati Prabhu. Don't miss out on this, because you see, what we ourselves can learn and understand by our own efforts and endeavor, which may take years and years of sadhana, years and years of efforts. Somebody who is practicing this for a really long time, who have, as I said, the realization is something which comes from the heart. You don't have to read, mug up and come and say something, because you are realizing this is what it is. This is how the world functions. This is how one has to develop. This is what one has to do. That is very rare to find. So take advantage of this session tomorrow. The title is Bhakti in the Time of Crisis. And there is going to be a separate link for that, which I will share in some time. I still don't have that right now, but I'll share it, and hope to see you all tomorrow. Other announcements? Okay. So, yeah, so okay. So we will, let's meet tomorrow for the 11 o'clock session first. And evening we will see, we will keep you posted if we have or we don't have, and what is going to have, what we're going to have, and what is going to be coming for the next week. So with that, we will stop today's session. Can I request all of you to come in front of your camera and raise your hand? We will do once chanting of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra.
Sorry, Prabhuji, 1 minute. Tomorrow, 11 a.m., right? It is there?
Yes, 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
Sure. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Srila Prabhupada ki, Godhead ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. See another little one today. Ashwini Mataji, what's his or her name?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. She's Adya.
Adya, nice to meet you, Adya.
Say hi.
Hi.
Hare Krishna. Ritve is waving now. Ritve is old. That's nice. Okay. See you all tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.